I remember having a Zoom call with the owner of our company going, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose everything. I can't pull out money out of my house because I'm not making money. Buyers aren't making moves. What am I going to do? I was running through my neighborhood and I passed a home on the water in the pink streets. So I reached out. 1 week later, I had a $1.2 million house under contract. I believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I believe that one of the biggest issues in our industry is a lack of education. Many aspects of our industry have changed, but the one thing that hasn't is that people still call real estate professionals for advice, for guidance, and they will still pay us, and they will still pay us what we feel we're worth. In years of teaching, I always get asked in every class I ever taught, what's the one thing you would do differently?
Welcome to Tampa Bay Unlocked, the podcast where we dive into the dynamic world of real estate and business in the vibrant Tampa Bay area. Join us as we sit down with top agents and industry leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories of success. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, our interviews will help you thrive in one of the hottest markets. Get ready to be inspired by one of our next experts, Bobby Poth. Poth. You know what? And Danielle and I talked about Poth. A great real estate agent here in the area for the last 8+ years in St. Pete.
About that.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. And partnered with Alex Clark over at Mainframe, doing amazing things in the area and making cool content. And I'm excited to dive into your world here, Bobby. You've been in real estate for quite some time. Yeah.
I have since October was 20 years. So this is 21.
Yeah, but where? So where did you start?
Yes.
Here?
No, so I started selling real estate in Citrus County at an ERA franchise long before Keller Williams ever made it on the scene there. So that tells you how long ago it was.
Yeah.
We were the largest real estate company in the area, and I joined there. My pre-licensed instructor was my first sales manager. So I got really good training there.
So let's go back 20 years ago. What was going on in your life that you decided, okay, I'm going to get into real estate?
You know, I always say I do everything backwards and in the wrong direction, on the wrong road. You probably don't remember it, but there used to be these infomercials that would play all the time. And it was about investing in real estate and how you could get these properties super cheap and with no money out of pocket. And there was this one where this woman was sitting in front of this yacht and she just kept saying, ask my husband for the tapes. And it was these investing tapes. So I'd gone to some of their conferences that they had or where they were just trying to sell you on things. And I looked at my best friend at the time and I'm like, why don't we just get a real estate license and maybe that will help us identify properties. And years later, when I became an instructor, I realized that that's why a lot of people start in the business because they just want access. And went to pre-license school through a community college and got my license and went a totally different direction and started selling real estate.
So the idea of being a real estate investor is what intrigued you to get the license, to have access?
It was, but I was 19 years old at the time. I bought my first house when I was 19. And I thought my real estate agent made a ton of money, even though it was a $49,000 house. She probably made like $1,000,
right?
And did a ton of work for it. So I thought this is a great career to get into, easy money, and it's funny because when I'm also an instructor, and when I teach post licensing classes, I always ask people why they got in the business, and then I tell the story about when I first got in when I first thought I wanted to get into real estate and why I quickly changed my mind. And it was interesting to me that years later I ended up in real estate. So,
yeah, no, it's great. And some people getting into the business think that it's easier than it is. And you've admitted in another podcast to having a little bit of an ego, right, coming into the business and thinking that business would come easily to you. Tell me about that time when you thought that, and what helped you overcome that and kind of have that gut check.
Yeah, well, going broke does that.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody gets into this business without an ego. We're the industry that we slap our photo on absolutely everything. We love seeing our name in a creative Canva logo, and it's an ego-driven industry. At least that's my experience. And it took a long time for me to not feel that for myself. But getting in, especially at 19, I thought that getting into real estate in an area that I grew up in, and I had worked in high school at a medical practice with some pretty affluent people, that I would have these connections, and everybody gets in. I hear it all the time. Well, I'm gonna focus on luxury. I'm gonna focus on $1 million listings.
Brand
And
new.
yeah, brand new.
Right.
And I realized that doesn't happen right away. The older I've gotten, the more affluent my social circle has become, and the more people have purchased larger homes. That has transitioned organically. But at 19, that wasn't the case. None of my friends were actually buying houses. And it was right before we had the big recession. So I learned real quick that I made a lot of money and lost a lot of money. And it was definitely a defining time in my career.
Yeah, you talk about the 2008 crash and going broke then. So what
Yeah.
was going on in that time? How did that affect you? What did you decide to do? What was going on in your head mentally?
Yeah. I often say to people, because there's a lot of differences between what we experienced then and what we're experiencing now. But I think those of us that survived that, whether we thrived or we didn't, have a little bit of PTSD from it, that impacts how we're approaching things now. And it truly felt like we just woke up one day and the phone stopped ringing. It was crickets. Listings weren't moving. You couldn't get showings on anything. Buyers weren't doing anything. And it felt like it was a matter of days from when it was the total opposite. You could list a vacant lot and flip that lot 7 times for a profit in a matter of 2 months. I mean, it was absolutely gangbusters, and a switch flipped overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you do? What was going on in your business and your world? Like, what did life look like for you then?
I dumped money into everything. Radio advertising, every form of advertising you could dump money into, I did to try to.
So you doubled down.
Yeah, completely, to try to bring in whatever business I could, until I realized that I needed to bring in income. And I and another real estate agent went to a bartending school, and I started tending bar. And shortly after that, ended up going bankrupt. And bounced back from it, thankfully. But it was a big lesson for me that, and I think how I'm approaching things in the market we're in now too is, very cautiously on what I'm investing my marketing dollars into, where I'm focusing that energy. But there's a lesson that I learned, because the market's always going like this, right? We thought at the beginning of COVID that things were dropping. People were leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the market, or in their deposits on the table, and walking away from transactions. But early in my career, like I'd say 6 months in, I wasn't making any money. Nobody makes money in the first 6 months. And I was going into the office late at night working. I wasn't going in during the day. And an agent, Annie Adams, came up to me and said one night when I was working late, and she said, "What's eating you, kid?" And I'm 20 years old. And I just unloaded. I'm not making any money. I can't pay the mortgage. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to get out of the business. I'm going to lose everything. And she looked at me and she said, "But what are you doing about it?" And I just looked dumbfounded. And she's like, "What are you doing to bring in business tomorrow? What are you actually doing? You're working on mailers. That's great. You're, doing market research. That's wonderful. But what are you doing to actually bring in business? If you need business, go get business." And she told me how when she started, she just would, drive and force herself to get out of the car and knock on for sale by owner doors. And if she felt unprepared, then she would evaluate why she was unprepared and fix it for the next one. So she challenged me for the next week to go knock on FSBOs every single day. And I did. And I took that lesson throughout my entire career. And when COVID started, I remember having a Zoom call with the owner of our company going, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose everything. I can't pull out money out of my house because I'm not making money. Buyers aren't making moves. What am I going to do?" And he was a little bit more gentle, but it was the same message. He's like, "Change your mindset, go to your database, look for opportunity." And I was running a lot during that time. And I was running through my neighborhood, and I passed a home on the water in the Pink Streets. And I thought, that's perfect for these guys that I was working with last year. But I knew it was in probate then, and they weren't interested. And I saw the signpost going up. So I reached out. 1 week later, I had a $1.2 million house under contract. And we're about to put it on the market for 4.2.
Wow. So there's a lot of lessons in there, and twice that you just shared of how reframing your mindset.
Reframing your mindset and just going out and getting business.
And of like, you're in control.
You are. You can't control what the market is doing, but you can control your mindset, and you can control what you're actually doing to bring in business.
Right. The market shouldn't dictate your success. It just dictates your strategy, right? Like that's what we learn in the Shift book.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the mindset around that's so important. Like, control your controllables, get out there and go do it. And look, on a run and in a better mindset, you're like, oh, here's a matching opportunity.
Yep.
And now it's leading to even business today.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's a really good story and a great lesson in there, especially for someone who's been in the business since 2008, like yourself going through that crash and then witnessing some similar things showing up, and probably some similar feelings maybe, and saying, okay, we just got to get out there and get after it and do the deal. That's really cool. So COVID, what a crazy time, right? In terms of business, when in your career, because you and Alex have partnered together, you and Alex Clark. What was going on when you guys decided to partner together, and how has that changed business for you?
Oh, wow. Over the years, I have tried to bring people on as associates or grow a team. I had a brokerage. And what I realized was, especially with my brokerage, that I was producing to keep other people fed. Nobody really was going to come to the table and work as hard as I was. I am a control freak, so I never felt like I could step away and there was ever anybody I could trust to do things the way I would or better. And I happened to have an associate who was moving and introduced me to Alex right as Alex got his real estate license. And Alex walked out of the room and I looked at this person, and it was the first time in my career. And keep in mind, I taught for Bob Hogue for years. I also co-owned a real estate school with 2 other brokers in the area. I've taught countless agents in our market. This was the first time I had somebody walk away where I was like, they've got it. If they align themselves right, they're going to be huge. And if you've met Alex, which you have, Alex has it. You can't describe it. It just is this thing about Alex. And Alex went to another brokerage and was not seeing success and came to me to join me. And we had a setup where he was just an associate with me. And after about a month and a half, 2 months, I called him and I'm like, what do you think about being 50-50 partners? I was having a burnout in my career, which I think a lot of us who have been doing this a while experience from time to time. And I was recognizing that, and I was looking at opportunities, whether it was taking a managing broker position somewhere, just kind of transitioning into what that next phase was. And Alex changed that because Alex brought the energy back to my business that I had at the beginning of my business, and fresh eyes. And I see that in where our business is today too, because I am definitely approaching things right now from a PTSD standpoint from the last recession. Well, Alex didn't go through that. So Alex's approach is very, very different. And it's completely a positive mindset of coming from a place of abundance and a place of, manifesting, nothing but success. Whereas I tend to approach things from a yeah, but we have to be realistic about how many of these are actually going to sell. And I think that really blends.
Yeah,
well.
It sounds like a good balance, right? Because you can't be over optimistic that you're blind,
Right.
And you're bringing some experience and wisdom from the past, but you can't get too caught up in the trenches of that, right? So that's cool that you're.
And Alex is the only person I've ever met that will work as hard as I do or harder and brings a different skill set to the table, but we complement each other really well. And I can leave on vacation and not have to worry about a thing. I know that at the end of the day, Alex has everything covered. And it's the first time in my career I've ever had that.
That's pretty remarkable. And what a cool thing, from where we started this conversation of talking about being, having a big ego, thinking that you're going to have it big, and now, diminishing that ego to a spot of bringing someone else into your world and saying, hey, let's go 50-50 and recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of each other.
Which isn't easy. When I say I don't feel like I have an ego in this industry. Alex might say differently, but I don't feel like I do. But when you are in business with somebody like Alex who can walk into a room with this dynamic personality that everybody loves, and you hear time and time again, Alex is so great, and you're like, yes, he is. It's hard not to, you have to get those emotions in check and realize that I also bring something to the table and we complement each other very, very well. And even in our business, it's not always, we're 50-50 and everything. And there's times where it doesn't look 50-50 on paper for either one of us.
Mhm.
And it's never going to be completely that. But I think what we each bring to the table allows each other to be even more successful.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because Alex starting out and having you with 20 years experience, you're guiding the ropes of that fresh energy, right? That could
Yeah.
be that could and does happen a lot with new agents of spinning their wheels in mud and not getting anywhere, right? The ambition is there, but not necessarily on the right things.
Yeah.
Right. And so having your wisdom and foresight to say, let's focus here, and this is how you handle this situation. I mean, he speaks so highly of you, and all the experience that you brought him. It's like you guys are two peas in a pod for sure.
Yeah. We it works.
Yeah. No, it's really, really great. You mentioned that you think everyone should have their broker's license in another show.
Yeah, I do.
And you're passionate about teaching and being at Bob Hogue and doing the real estate school. When in your career did that become important to you?
When I got my broker's license. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of meeting Manuela Hendrickson. She taught for Bob for over 20 years. She's had her brokerage for years. She's, almost anybody who's taken their broker's course has had her as an instructor, and she's the best. She was my broker instructor. And in my first broker's class, the first thing she said is, you don't know what you don't know. And I learned through that broker's course that it's so true. And in the 2 broker post-licensing classes, you don't know what you don't know. And between her and my first sales manager, who was my pre-license instructor, who also owns a real estate school, the 2 of them were who inspired me to get my instructor's license. And I did at the same time I got my broker's license and to teach. And I just really feel like you don't know what you don't know. It's so true. And I believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I believe that one of the biggest issues in our industry is a lack of education. And I don't mean people getting in this industry without a college degree, because that wasn't my path either. I feel like so many people get in this industry and it's so easy to get your license. You can take a course online. You can do all your post-licensing online. The state exam, I don't find incredibly hard if you're a good test taker, especially because there's a method to it. And they go to brokerages where there's no training. And I just feel like people get a license to go out and commit malpractice. And if everybody had a broker's license, I think we would just have a higher standard in our industry.
So what was instilled in you, or what did you see that you said, okay, you now have your broker's license, but now I want to teach new agents, new inspiring real estate agents to get their license. What was going on then?
So I come from a family of educators. My mom retired as a high school math teacher. My stepmom was the elementary science supervisor in Pinellas. My dad was one of the 4 area superintendents. Half of my siblings are teachers, and half of their in-laws are teachers. I swore I would never go into the family business of education. I wanted to make money. But when I say I believe that a rising tide lifts all ships, I truly do. I really love it when I see agents collaborating and helping each other. And that's one of the things that I think Alex and I really connected over, is this passion for collaborating with other agents in other brokerages, because somebody else's success doesn't take away from mine. And I will put my contract knowledge up against most people's and most brokers in this area. I get phone calls every day from agents in almost every brokerage with contract questions. And I love that, especially since I closed my brokerage and I don't get to fill that, that part of my cup. So teaching for me did that. It allowed me to take what I know and help other people take that knowledge and make themselves better. And for me, I think what I got out of it, because it was not money, was the relationships. For me, it was really great in building relationships in this community with colleagues in this industry, building my reputation. And also, when you teach, you learn more.
That's what I was hoping you would say. Yeah, through the act of teaching, you had to become a student again.
100%. I will never forget. I was teaching the buyer broker agreement, which is one of the things that is taught in the 45-hour post-license licensing class in person. And in it is an option for a retainer. And I remember I taught this like 3 or 4 times, and one day I'm teaching it, and I'm standing in front of the class, and I looked at it, I'm like, "Why am I not doing that? Why am I not charging a retainer?" And I started looking more into it about what's involved in it, what are the protocols. When I had my brokerage, I did charge a retainer when I worked with buyers, and Alex and I are considering moving in that direction still. But every class I taught, I learned something,
Hmm.
whether it was about this industry or about colleagues.
That's powerful. And being, here at KW, where like training is so heavy, and we encourage our agents to teach and all over. It's and there's always good, even if two people show up to class, even the instructor is learning,
Mhm.
and everyone comes out better because of it, and more humbled, I think.
Yeah.
Right, because you think you know everything until you have to go up there and teach, and you're like, oh, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's really, really awesome that you've had that experience. So you're opening your own brokerage. What was that like?
That was ego. That was 100% ego. You can even see it when you look back at the branding, which was a huge mistake. And we've had agents leave our company to open their own brokerage. And I always tell our leadership that if somebody has in their mind that they want to do it, they have to do it.
It's
They
the
have to
itch
try
they have
it.
to scratch, right?
It's the same with starting a team and everything else. For me, in hindsight, I should have had a team before I opened my brokerage. But the company I was with at the time was going through some changes, and merging with another company. And at the same time, the state was changing advertising rules when it came to teams. So for me, it was the perfect timing to open a brokerage. But what started it was, during the last recession, I said I had to figure out how to make money. And part of that was I ended up with an opportunity at a real estate law firm here in St. Pete. And I took a hiatus from this business, and I was managing this law firm. And we grew from 3 attorneys and 2 staff to 9 or 10 attorneys and a staff of about 40. And I had grown my position into a position that was, I was compensated fairly well. And I also had some flexibility to jump back into this business kind of part-time. And then I was teaching for Bob Hogue at night. And I hit a point where I realized I couldn't do it all. And I knew I was going to have to make a change. That was with an independent brokerage. I was producing more than anybody there on a less than part-time basis. I had the freedom in my salary job, but I couldn't manage it all. And I kind of had this moment where I remember walking out of my office going, I can't walk back in. I just can't do it. So I took a 2-week trip, went on vacation, and turned that trip into a month, and came back, resigned, and opened my brokerage and said, I'm just going to jump all in and focus on it. And it was good. But as an independent brokerage, as a small independent brokerage, I realized that I can't sell something I don't believe in. And I believe in my knowledge. I believe I'm a great instructor. But when I'm trying to keep the doors open and produce, as an independent brokerage, I couldn't offer new agents, which is what I was attracting, what a company with good sales training and good processes and good mentorship could. I could on like an individual basis, but not on a larger basis. So I realized during that first year that I just was not making money because I was focused on growing the business, not selling real estate. Then I jumped back in just focusing on sales, and I was fine. I could have continued operating as an independent broker, until I was introduced to the company I'm with now.
Yeah. So what were some big learning lessons out of that? You said ego was what started it, coming out of it, and then having the ego to an awareness to close the doors on it.
Yeah.
What if there was one big lesson that you could chalk up to that? What would it be?
Trust your gut. I knew from the onset that my company was named after me. And I knew that I would never go work for a brokerage that was named after another individual. Take the big ones out, the Keller Williams, the Smith and Associates, the ones that are really established, but like an independent brokerage, a very small independent, I wouldn't go do that. So why would somebody else? But I listened to the marketing company I hired. And that was my number one mistake, not listening to my gut. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes I made with my brokerage. And then listening to my gut at the end, which was, closing it and watching my sign come down and get replaced with the company we're with now, was a sad day. It was an exciting opportunity, but it was a really sad day. Going from a broker owner to a broker associate, there's that was an ego check.
Mm-hmm.
But what I also realized was that from my colleagues in the industry, it didn't matter. Most people think I own the company we're with now. So it just doesn't, it didn't matter. It didn't matter from a consumer standpoint.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's tough, right? Running an independent brokerage, you become all the things that you don't want to do when you're trying to sell real estate
Yep.
and get to lose focus on the main thing, and the books aren't as good, and you got to manage the books and all of this, and it's a whole
Yeah.
thing. Tons of learning lessons in there, and you mentioned traveling before,
Yeah.
and you bring up ego a lot, I'm curious about the time that you spent in Thailand.
Yeah.
And learning this new perspective of the excess that we have
Yeah.
in America. And so, what have you intentionally removed from your life, and what has that travel taught you?
I think for me, a lot of those lessons end up very short-lived. Because we live in a society where we are taught to work harder to get more. And that's something that I constantly have to remind myself not to do. Going to Thailand, I came back and I opened my brokerage immediately after. I realized that I was stuck. I was so stressed working the way I was working, and I wasn't passionate about a lot of what I was doing. So that needed to be a shift. Opening the school, it was the same thing. Bob sold his school to Kaplan, and there was an opportunity to open one. And when that no longer was working for me, I gave up that interest in it. Knowing when to throw in the towel and not accept that as failure, I can look back at the brokerage and I don't feel that closing it was a failure. It was just a phase.
Yeah, I heard this great new line a couple months ago, and it's been sticking with me. Is that we're either winning or learning.
Right.
It's not failure.
Yeah.
Winning or learning. And
Yeah,
there's
I believe that.
a lot of learning opportunities.
Yep, I believe that. And so for me, what travel has taught me is that that's really my love. I love traveling as much as I can. I work to travel. Thankfully, with an amazing business partner, I can do that and not stress when I'm gone. But yeah, I just don't, I like nice things, but it's not necessarily what drives me anymore. I had 4 cars, I have 1 car. I no longer care about having the biggest and the best. I don't get jealous when I see people accomplish big things. For me, it's just being kind of happy with who I am, where I am, and knowing that, my path is unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. And back to your following your gut and intuition, when you sever that connection, you can feel it, and you're really leaning into that, which makes sense as to why you're a relationship based agent, and you don't spend time cold calling, even though you did get out there and do some door knocking, maybe at one point. But
Yeah.
so what are some skills? For the agents that are listening now, as you being an instructor, they're like, okay, what can I learn from Bobby? I don't want to cold call. I don't want to do these things. Were you intentional about being a relationship sphere-based agent? And what are some skills or things that are needed to be able to do that?
In years of teaching, I always get asked in every class I ever taught, what's the one thing you would do differently? And my answer is always the same, and it's join a team. That's what I would have done differently. I said in the beginning, I have done everything backwards and the hardest way. And I think starting in this industry as an independent agent, while many people do and can be successful, I believe it's the hardest path to do that. Unless you have a built-in network, you come from an industry where you've got a built-in network of people who are going to be supportive in buying real estate through you, or a spouse that has that, joining a team is the best way to learn. It's to learn how you want to operate your business, because you might learn things you like and don't like from that team. But it also gives you immediate product to be able to promote. And if you're not joining a team, then joining a brokerage where you have collaborative agents that will allow you to collaborate with them and promote their product. That's what I had noticed, the biggest change with Alex was the moment he was able to take ownership of big listings, suddenly his sphere saw a totally different side. It was, oh yeah, you're in this business and you're doing it. And I think that that's what so many people are missing. I think they're afraid to join a team. They're afraid to be under somebody else's name because we are ego driven. And that's the one thing I would change. I would go back and I would join a team.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's like the curve to learning just is exponential on that 10x growth when you're able to watch a mentor and have that experience and see their systems and how they do things, where you could end up spending hours trying to develop
Yeah.
a system to do something as simple of, submitting listing paperwork, right? So no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I wish, luckily I think I don't know. I would say it's like 60-40 with new agents. I think a lot of agents that come in that want to join a team, and it's like finding that matching process. Like you and Alex have been so lucky, right? And you've been intentional about connecting that. But not every agent's fit for every team.
It's very true.
Or vice versa, right?
That's very true.
I always describe it as like a matching program for like doctor residency.
Yeah.
It's or the NFL draft or whatever, right? It's you got to fit personalities and everything. So you can't force a circle into a square hole or whatever. So now things have shifted from when you first got into the business to now in terms of marketing. You mentioned marketing, hiring a marketing agency when you started your brokerage, and now. So how has marketing shifted for you?
I mean, the industry's changed a lot. When I started in this business, agents didn't have individual websites. Zillow had just come on the scene and people were only using it to get their Zestimate. They weren't competing with us. People were still coming into the office to get listings or ask for maps to, go. We had to download the MLS to our phone, to our laptop every day. It wasn't on our phone. It was so different. And I've always said that I think that the way to make the most money in real estate is to sell things to real estate agents, because we will buy absolutely anything that we think is the golden ticket that's going to, change our business or bring something in.
To not have to pick up the phone, right?
Yeah. And the easiest sale thing is it just takes one sale to pay for it. For being in a sales business, we're the easiest people to sell to. Where we're at with our marketing now is, really focusing a lot on social media content, which a lot of which Alex has learned in his coaching programs. Our social media approach is very, very different, but, focusing on a lot of social media content, which for me lends really well to being a relationship agent, because my social media doesn't really bring in blind referrals in business. It keeps me in front of my sphere. It keeps them knowing that I'm in this business. I want them to feel guilty if I'm not the person that they call. That's what social media does for me, for my sphere, for the farm area, all of that. And that's really the heavy focus.
I'm just glad you said that, because I get the question all the time, well, how many leads do you get from social media? And it's sometimes hard to measure.
Yeah.
To your point of like social media, if you're doing it right, I think it's you meet someone wherever, they follow you. Now they're in your circle of seeing what you're doing.
Right.
When their time is right, they're there.
Well, and I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
For me, social media works in engaging my sphere. That's where I see the biggest benefit of social media. For Alex gets a lot of leads from referrals in other markets that follow Alex's social media. That isn't my experience with it. So I think Alex's approach is just different. So I think for everybody, really seeing like, what does that tool actually do for you? Because it's not going to be the same for everybody. And I think that, in our industry, whether it's the car we drive or our social media or our image or where we live, there's this idea of keeping up with the Joneses. And, we have some agents in our market with crazy social media videos going viral. Not my brand. It might not work for me. I don't have to compete with everybody else. I'm competing with myself.
I just had a conversation with another agent last week about this, of some of those agents whose videos are going viral don't necessarily lead to business.
Yet,
right. Yeah, I think if they do it, but I'll be curious to see, because some people are taking some untraditional approaches.
Yeah.
And I it's too early to say whether
I got in a big debate about this the other day.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on it?
I got in this debate because there's a lot of people in our industry, especially very established people who have been doing this a long time, who feel that some of these social media videos that we see newer agents doing hurt the image of our industry. And I think that that's a valid view. We're in an industry where we're constantly compared to used car salesmen and, I hate that our initial license is called a sales associate license because I think sales is really the least of what we do. Um, so I understand. I think that's a valid point of view. However, what I love about this industry is I think there's a place in it for everybody, and everybody has a different brand. And some of these agents, when I look at the numbers of what they're doing, and I look at the numbers that they're getting on their social media, there is no correlation between the success on social media and sales. Yet, a lot of them are newer in this business in a market that has shifted tremendously since last year. And I think maybe building the foundation that they're building could translate with the generation that they're hitting into sales at some point. It'll be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by it, and I'm glad you said that. I never had the thought that I think it's tarnishing the industry. I just think some people, my initial gut goes, oh, people think it's funny and share it, but does anyone think that they actually want to call that person?
Yeah.
I don't know, right? And as you're saying that, the thought just came of like, I hope they have the right training and know how to do what needs to be done behind the scenes, right? Because you can be a great marketer up front.
I can look at some of the companies they're with and say they don't. But
Right. Well, so that's my point, Bobby, because I think, there's a real disservice to your point of lack of training, everyone not being a broker, out there doing malpractice, not having all the tools necessary, or the community. A big thing of like we're in such an era of brokerages of like who has the newest shiny CRM system, right? And or who's going to do my marketing for me? And we're really missing out on what's the culture of that company that we're at. Are they inspire? Is it collaboration over competition? Are they sharing? Are they helping each other? If you're not on a team, can you rely on another agent that to go and help open a door for you? Like these types of family type of things. Because being a business owner, which we all are, is lonely. And, even though we're dealing with people all day, you're kind of having to do this, I won't call it a facade, but you're being your best version of your best self.
Yeah.
Right. And when business gets hard, you can't turn to your clients to tell them about it. Right. So who are you going to?
Yep. It's interesting because I feel like, and I saw this a lot in the teaching side of my career, was that, especially in pre-license, when they first get in, and you'll notice in a pre-license class, if you ever get the luck to teach one, they night 1 to night 2, you drop 50% of the students usually. And that's because they start realizing that, I don't get paid. I have to work for it. It's commission only. There's a split with a broker. And it's so interesting to me how so many people get in this business going, I have to give X to my broker. It's almost like the broker is taking it from them rather than realizing that what are you getting for that? I've never felt, I had the true 100% model there was. I had my own brokerage. Now we have a split with the company we're with. I feel like there's a huge benefit that I get from the company, from our broker, from our team. I don't look at it as the broker's taking X or I'm giving it up. I look at it as, I'm a extension and representation of that brand. And I think people join these brokerages, especially these 100% models, because they don't want to give anything to a broker. And it's such a flawed mindset in my mind. And if you look at the numbers of the most successful agents in our market, you're going to see a trend in the types of brokerages they're with. And that speaks volumes to me.
Yeah, because of what they learn, and you're an average of the people you surround yourself with, right? So you show up in an area where you got high producers, you're naturally going to become the next one. And to that point, value is like if you're getting, right? If you're feeling that way, you're paying money, and you're not getting value, then you don't want to pay that anymore. But if you're getting exceptional value, then the money's not even a question, right? It's like if there was a home that was waterfront, brand new, and you perceived to be a $2 million home, and I said, hey, it's $50,000. I bet you would find that $50,000 and buy that, right? Because you're like, well, the value is there. Right. And it would be nothing versus if it was dilapidated and, and you were saying, no, this is actually $10 million. And you're like, I wouldn't pay $1 for it. Well, now there's a difference in value. And yeah, so to your point, it's like, what are you getting in return? Because to think that you're walking in, your ego's so big of I don't need anything.
But it's also, that's the lack of education and training in this industry.
Yeah.
I think it all kind of goes hand in hand.
Well, I don't understand why these brokers want to be a race to the bottom.
That's exactly what it is.
right?
That's exact. And you notice a lot of them shifting models too as the market changes.
Yeah, because they don't have the culture behind them to really get the group together of people who want to collaborate and work
Yeah.
together, right?
I've
We're in the
always
people business.
I've always said that tried and true in this industry always wins. In 20 years of selling real estate, I've watched Zillow change business models. I've watched the media say we're going to be phased out and we're going to be replaced and there's no need for a real estate agent and buyers are going to, find things on their own. And many aspects of our industry have changed, but the one thing that hasn't is that people still call real estate professionals for advice, for guidance, and they will still pay us, and they will still pay us what we feel we're worth when we show that we're worth it.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that has never changed. All the other dynamics have, but that's why I don't get scared about those things. I get scared about the market changes.
Yeah. I think it's as long as you know your value, right? And in this market now, I mean, 2021, we were in a speed to lead market. Now we're in a speed to skill, right? Do you actually have the skill set, which is important in the training and education and the other agents that you're surrounding yourself with, to be able to have instead of tough conversations, I'm calling them great conversations with sellers about how to appropriately price their home in a market that's shifting.
Well, and you said the other agents you surround yourself with, and I think that that's key. For me, I've always said that I will never hit the numbers to be the number one agent in Pinellas County. I will never do that. I'm not going to work that hard to do that, but also I know where my business is, where I want it to go, the quality of life I want. If there was ever any award I would want, it would be that Mr. Miss Congeniality award. Like, I want to be the agent that people know I will collaborate, that I will work together, they can call me for advice, because that helps me be successful. I want to know that in a multiple offer situation, the agent on the other side knows my reputation and that they want to work with me. That's what our team always tries to accomplish. And it's really interesting. You may have seen, there's a group of female luxury agents that call themselves the Mavens, and they do their dinner. And, Joey Romanek reached out to a group of us about a month ago and said, why aren't we doing something similar? So now we have the Mavericks. And it's this really great group of agents that, we just had our first lunch. We're about to do our second, and we're kind of changing the format. We're doing it at different properties and stuff like that. But even most of us already collaborated with each other. We already had a great deal of respect. But just forming that little cohort in that group text, we're already promoting each other's properties and listings and opportunities and finding ways to collaborate. And that's what I love. Somebody else's success does not take away from mine.
No,
there's enough out there for everybody.
Plenty to go around, and it's way better when we collaborate. And naturally, one of my things is I think sometimes it's when someone is at that little brokerage that maybe isn't given that. We just do more when we're under or close to the same roofs. Right,
100%. And when you're surrounded by people who are doing more than you,
yeah,
that's not a threat. That's
when
something to strive
when I
to.
can tell you about the off-market property that I have coming, and we can collaborate on how it should be marketed, and you're thinking through the people that that might want to buy it, or vice versa. It just creates so much momentum, and it's honestly better for the sellers or buyers that we're working with. So I love that you guys are doing that. That's pretty cool. And to your point, so you said, hey, I want to be the agent that when there's a multiple offer situation, that they know that you have a good reputation. What are some things that you are intentional about, or how, for the agent who said, hey, I'm still working on my first deal, how do they become that agent?
Yeah. Well, first, I'd like to be back to multiple offer situations.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes. Well, if you price the house right, you can be.
Yeah. I think you get to that point by leading with integrity and authenticity. I think it's so easy to come from a place of scarcity in this industry. If you research all the agents in our market, a very small percentage of us are the sole breadwinners for our household, or this is our sole source of income. Most agents have, they have retirement income from another industry or a spouse with income. So when you know that if I don't sell something, I can't pay that mortgage, it's really challenging not to come from that place of scarcity. But to shift that mindset to, okay, that person over there is successful, or we both have the same friend, but they chose to work with them, and not get jealous of it, but to applaud it, to encourage somebody else's success, and to not be adversarial. I think we see this so often that agents think that being adversarial is representing their customer or client the best, and it's not. Coming at a place of being collaborative, in everything, we will allow any agent to do content on our listings.
Well, I don't understand
You
why you
don't
wouldn't.
even have to, you can say it's your listing. I don't care.
Right. It's good
Sell it.
marketing.
I care about the check going in the bank.
Right.
I don't care who gets credit for it. None of that. None of that matters. I want to collaborate. It's good for everybody, and it's what's good for the consumer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really powerful. I'm glad you said that. There's more of that is important, and being in a situation when you have, when you start knowing a lot of people around town, there's going to be that opportunity. Someone's going to list with not you or someone else, and
I have a real quick story.
Yeah, please.
I saw you had done you did a podcast with Monica Crawford.
Yeah,
who's one of my favorite agents. There was a listing she had coming up, or I was working with buyers who were renting this home in the Pink Streets, and the seller of the home was going to sell it. And I knew this, and I do a lot of business in the Pink Streets. And I was on the phone with Monica because she happened to have a house under contract around the corner, just kind of asking about it. And she mentioned that she was on her way to a listing, or she was on her way to a listing appointment in the Pink Streets. And I was like, is it this address by any chance? And her response was, yeah, are you up for it too? I said, no, but here's everything I know off market that's coming on the market in the Pink Streets. So use that for what you will to show that you have more knowledge than anybody else. And she called me afterwards. She was so appreciative, brought a great gift by my house, super sweet. But for me, I didn't think there was anything special about doing that. I wasn't going to get the listing. Why would I not want to encourage one of the best agents I know to have a leg up over everybody else? And I don't think that that's why she got it. I think she got it because she's a rock star.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Monica would always return that favor. And I think having relationships with agents like that, where if the table were turned, they would also do good, is really important.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
And that comes from the leadership down.
Yes, it does. That's really, really important. Of encouraging that and not letting that lose sight of that. And that's culture, right? That's culture in our business, and it's the unspoken thing. And I always come from a place of, I want to build the biggest building in town by just building the biggest building in town, right? And doing it with honey. And I stole that from Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, he says, like, you don't need to build a business using vinegar. Like, you can do it with honey. And to your point, like, you want to be the one who they're excited when the phone rings, versus like, oh man, I'm this, or this is who has that listing. Like, that's just not a good place to come from. And some agents do that. You know what? That's okay. And it's doing building the biggest business and having honey and observing ego is not letting that agent who is nasty get in the way of, and you don't need to match them at their level. You got to keep your high road. And I do watch some. They'll be that agent that is good, but they will drop to the level of I would just call it nasty, right?
Yeah.
And that's no good. And I think if we just keep propping each other up the way you guys are, I love what you were doing with the Mavericks group, and then maybe like just support each other. We'll get more done. Right. We'll have more fun.
Collaboration. I always say collaboration and competition can coexist when you're working with collaborators.
Yeah, because you can be competitive in collaboration.
100%.
Right? Like, if you and I were up against the same listing appointment and you got it over me, I would want to know, well, what did you do?
Yeah.
Right? What did you do? What did you bring? What did you say? How did you price? Like, I would be intrigued of that and look at that as a learning opportunity, not and still high five, let's go, because I'll get you on the next one, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of competition and collaboration is more fun.
Yep.
Yeah, love that. Bobby, you're doing incredible things around town, and a lot of agents know you, and you hold a good reputation. What legacy are you building?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know that I've thought about that. I hope I'm pretty far from that legacy. So.
But you're doing it right now.
I think that, for me, if I were to be out of this industry tomorrow, I think that I would, if anybody thought about how I ran my business, I think I just want them to think of me as, that agent who, truly to my core believed that a rising tide lifts all ships. I try to lead with authenticity and integrity in every situation. It's just who I am. No paycheck, no commission check, no listing, no milestone is ever important enough for me to sway from that.
I think that's your quote. I mean, Heising rise, lift all ships. That's
Yeah.
your thing. We're closing out on that, I think, Bobby. Because we have almost gone an hour, believe it or not. But I do like to ask all the guests, doesn't matter what podcast I'm doing,
Yeah.
St. Pete's just an incredible place to live. We
It
didn't even
is.
get to talk about any of the funness that happens around town. And what, just people want to be here. I think it's one of the best cities in the country, just the way we're surrounded by water and all the great things and the new development that's coming. But you being pretty much a native here, it's your birthday, Bobby, and we're going out to eat in St. Pete. Where are we going?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a tough one because I probably would cross the bridge for that.
But we can't cross the bridge. We can't cross the bridge.
I would say Rococo. I'm a steak person. I don't drink anymore, but that used to be my go-to, a filet and wine, at the bar there. They have a great team there, consistency. But really, we've got so many great places in St. Pete and so many new places popping up. It's really fascinating to see how the city has changed in the last 5 years, but especially the last 10, 15 years. I mean, it's really a huge transformation.
It's been remarkable, and I'm excited to just continue to watch it. I think change is inevitable, and it's just a matter of what direction we're going, and it seems like we're heading in a good direction. Some would, but there's opinions on both sides of that. But I'd rather see more development than less, and people vacating and buildings getting boarded up rather than going up. Right.
Yep.
So that's awesome. So rising tides lift all ships. Bobby, you've been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, such an honor to have you here. Thank you for what you've done for our industry and the area and teaching and continuing to be a great collaborator with all the agents. So thank you.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Yes, of course. If you're still with us, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.